Well, first of all, hello everyone. My name is Dan Sullivan. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm the head of partnerships here at Cuseum. Hope everyone is enjoying your summer, working towards some reopening plans. Just for those that don't know, Cuseum, we work with cultural institutions, higher education institutions, and schools to help them better engage their visitors, members, and alumni with digital tools like digital alumni engagement cards and alumni portals. So super excited to have you all on an alumni hour webinar, on another alumni hour webinar, actually. We've been doing this series for probably about a year now. So we've got recordings. If you ever want to check out some of the older ones that we've done, we've got them all on the Cuseum website. Real quick, if you want to take a second and introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. Make sure that little blue drop down is set to panelists and attendees. Otherwise, nobody will see your messages. Second, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A functionality down at the bottom of your screen. We would love to address any questions that you've got. We're going to work through some questions that I've prepared for our panelists, and then I'm sure you'll have some too. So now with that, on to the webinar. So after more than a year and a half of pandemic restrictions, a lot of colleges and universities are planning a full return back to campus for fall 2021. So as we approach the upcoming semester, what do the activities and goals of alumni relations teams look like? How are signature events like homecoming coming together? How can staff manage the competing demands of organizations in person and virtual engagement opportunities as well? And how are alumni relations staff working with their campus partners in enrollment, career services, advancement, etc.? We've got an awesome lineup today. We've got Kimberly Grant, the Assistant Vice President of Alumni Engagement at University of Laverne. We have Carol Bassie, Director of Alumni and Parent Communities at Drew University, and Teresa Verbeck, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations at USC. So we're going to start by going around the room really quick. Panelists, if you can just give a quick high level on who you are, what your role is, a little bit about what your alumni base looks like, how big your program is. We can start with that. So Kimberly, why don't you start us off?
Sure, happy to. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm Kim Grant. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Alumni Engagement at the University of Laverne, which I know the joke, Laverne and Shirley. Yes, yes, yes. Interestingly, we are in Southern California. We're in the very, very far corner of LA County, which puts us in an interesting position because we have to play by LA County rules as far as COVID restrictions, but we really honestly don't have the population density issues that they have in the city or on the west side. So that's been an interesting in and of itself. We have about 8,000 students and about 84,000 alumni. Very regional, mostly. We started off as a college for educators way back in the 1890s. Now we're a university with 4 different colleges, 9 different regional campuses. Very kind of spread out, but still pretty centered in Southern California. About 90% of our alums and students are in, say, 100-mile radius. So that's kind of our little world that we live in.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for being here. Carol, what's going on at Drew?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. I work at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey, which is a suburb outside of New York City, about an hour train ride away. We have about 22,000 alums, just under 2,000 students in all of our 3 schools. We have a College of Liberal Arts, Casperson School of Graduate Studies, which started off as a graduate school for liberal arts, and we have the Theological School. And Drew actually started as a theological school back in 1867. In 1928, the College of Liberal Arts was added. I would say our student base has become a lot more diverse geographically. It used to be fairly local, including the theological school. The theological school is pretty much entirely online now. So they have a lot of alumni in, places like North Carolina and Seattle and as far as South Korea. The Casperson School is very regional. It's usually commuter traffic. And the College of Liberal Arts is a mix of commuter and residential students, but the international population has really grown over the past several years. So that's it in a nutshell. I work with all 3 schools.
Awesome.
I also work with the Launch Center that is incorporating alumni more into both curricular and co-curricular programming.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. And I have to, speaking of international, I have to give a shout. We've got someone joining from Korea. Like that, what time is it? 2 a.m? Amazing. Welcome. That is commitment. Teresa, what's going on over at USC?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am the Executive Director of Alumni Relations at the University of Southern California, so the West Coast USC. So we're neighbors to Kimberly. We are right in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, so we certainly are in the brunt of the LA County restrictions. We have about 46,000 students. That's combined graduate and undergraduate student populations, a little bit, about half and half, tending a little bit more towards graduate students. And we have just over 450,000 living alumni. Our alumni relations team is a division of advancement, and we're a non-dues paying organization.
Awesome.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Teresa, thanks for being here. And staying with you, for this first question to kick us off, from an alumni relations perspective, can you talk a little bit about kind of some of your primary plans and priorities as we roll into the fall of 2021?
Sure. And, for those of you who may not know, we just had a little bit of a wrench thrown in that these last couple of weeks because County just instituted a new mask mandate recently. So I think we certainly have plans to be back on campus. Students are back on campus. We are rolling out our primary programs again in person. So, but at the same time, still kind of playing it by ear. I think we're looking at how do we continue to be in a place where we're able to pivot. I think for the most part, it seems like it's the indoor eating that for us is going to be an issue, and still waiting to get a little bit of direction from university on exactly what that looks like. But for the most part, we plan to do our big central programs that are outdoor and everything that we can back in person while still taking advantage of some of, leaving some stuff virtual that we thought we really were able to leverage the virtual experience to engage people who are outside of the area or who can't make it to campus.
For sure. Yeah, everything seems to be a little bit up in the air here.
Yeah.
Carol, how about for you, from an alumni relations perspective, what are some of your kind of immediate plans and priorities for the fall?
Yeah, so we're trying to get back to a more robust programming schedule, but we're re-envisioning it. Our budget got cut. And so, but the programs still have to happen. So we're, evaluating in-person programming, virtual and hybrid as well. In fact, we have our first in-person event outdoors on a rooftop in New York City on August 17th, and we're going to a ballpark about a week later. So I think our alums are really anxious to get back together and see each other. And I think they'll be excited about it. And we figured outdoors they'll feel fairly comfortable with that. We're getting our alumni boards really refocused on the work of the school. There were a lot of updates during the pandemic and not a lot of work happening that supported my team. We're a small staff, so I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And I lean on them a lot. We're also starting to connect alums and students in a way that's a little more responsive to student needs. Students didn't really react well to networking on Zoom. And I think that in-person networking is really crucial to their development and preparation for post-college. And then we're also going to be supporting our major gift officers by identifying opportunities to help their prospective donors engage more fully.
For sure. We are definitely going to dig more into that. Kim, how about for you? How are you, planning out some of these immediate plans and priorities for the fall?
Well, echoing what Carol just said about, reductions in staff and in budget, trying to figure out what we can do and what we can do well. Similarly, our alumni board really, didn't do much. And so one of my first goals is to get them having an in-person summer retreat at the end of August so that we can talk in person, sit down, hammer out some plans to give them more tangible work to do this year, which they really pivoted nicely in a way. They did some virtual programming like life coaching programs. We called it Leo Life Coaching, where 3 of them teamed up and they kind of did these virtual sessions for students, alumni, whomever. And those are really creative and engage them, and they really enjoyed that. So I'd like to carry that forward. The other thing is we were fortunate to finish our comprehensive campaign early, but weren't able to celebrate. So we're wanting to do an in-person major donor event, small, like 50 people, but kind of to make them feel special and really celebrate this fact that this did happen during the pandemic. It's easy to kind of forget. And then homecoming, I know we're getting into that later, but the short of it is that we were able to push it a little bit. We usually do it in October, but because we have so many, unknowns about what LA County is going to look like in the fall, we decided it always hinges on a home football game. So we picked a home football game a little later this year, like early November, rather than October, to sort of buy ourselves some more preparation time.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That actually segues nicely into something I wanted to ask really quickly before I do. As I go through these questions too with our panelists, folks in the chat, feel free to jump in and share ideas. We can all get the most out of this conversation if you are willing to share some things that you're experimenting with, some wins, some losses, what's working, what's not. So don't hesitate to share your ideas there in the chat. So Kim, staying with you, occasionally, and you just hit on this, homecoming has traditionally been really one of the most important signature events of the fall in alumni relations. And last year, I think a lot of colleges and universities really started to opt to translate that into a more virtual or even a hybrid format. So like due to the pandemic, of course, how did you come to that decision to push it back and not go virtual? Can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at that decision?
Yes. Well, so last year we decided to still do a homecoming weekend. We kind of rebranded it. We called it Game On Weekend, with the idea of being like, there's no football game, but you've still got game, get your game on. And it was kind of a lifelong learning, virtual sessions all week long. I pulled in some alumni who have areas of expertise that, they're happy to share, financial planning, that kind of thing. And then some fun, with some like games and so forth. So that we handled it last year that way. People here with us, at least, are really hungry to do something in person. And I really honestly feel like we'd be slaughtered if we said that we were, no, it's going to be all virtual again. I do. So what we're doing is we're really abbreviating it. We're doing like the major things that are sort of the stakes in the ground. So on Friday night, we're having an event for our older alums, which are all the people who graduated 50 or more years ago. We call them Golden Leopards because they have been really, really restricted and they're dying to get together and on campus. So we're going to do a little luncheon for them on Friday. On Saturday, really it's the tailgate, the street fair, and the football game. And then on Sunday, there's a traditional sort of brunch at the church that used to kind of run the school, the Church of the Brethren in Laverne. So we're just going to kind of turn everybody's attention to and if you'd like to go to their brunch, it's open to all, and it's a nice way to end the weekend. So we're really abbreviating things to be very streamlined. And if there's no football game, then kind of that wipes out Saturday. Oh, what we did virtually last year that we really liked and we want to hold on to, and is easy to hold on to, is a hybrid 5K run. So we've always had a fun run in the morning. And so we'll still do that in person, but we'll also do for the whole week, a virtual version of that where you join Strava and you can, log yourself on and share your photos and share your times and everything. And we have some winners that we announce on social media. So, so that's going to be our kind of thing that will be accessible regardless to anyone, anywhere. But for the other events, it's kind of well, hopefully we can have a football game and, people can come.
100%. Carol, on your side, and by the way, some great questions coming through in the chat. So feel free to respond in chat, anybody who's tuning in, but I'll also ask our panelists as well. Carol, for homecoming, how are you handling that? How are you handling your fall events?
So homecoming is called Ranger Weekend, and it's actually run by the athletics department. We did not have it last year, even virtually. I did add some sort of fun component into our Halloween programming. We did a Halloween virtual 5K to kind of fill the gap a little bit with some of our alumni athletes. Reunion is typically in June for us, and it was definitely virtual this past year. The timing kind of wasn't ideal because just as virtual reunion was starting, everything opened up in New Jersey. So, so I think attendance kind of fell off. We are planning a big fall festival though. And by big, remember, we have 22,000 alums and we have under 2,000 students. So we typically have family weekend in the fall in September. Student engagement is still planning family weekend. We are tagging on to what they're doing, adding a few more food trucks, adding a beer garden, and adding an alumni band, because we know how anxious alums are to get back to campus. And I expect our rugby guys and gals, I expect our rugby players are going to want to come to campus too and do a rugby game then, because that's probably the thing that was missed the most in reunion.
Love a good rugby game. Teresa, how about for you? How are you handling homecoming and or events in this fall?
Yeah, so our homecoming and reunions programs are combined in one weekend, and same for us, homecoming centers around football. So that is usually kind of a come one, come all. So as long as football is happening, we will have a game day kind of interaction experience, but reunions is where we really do our targeted engagement. I will say same thing to Kimberly's experience. We, one of the upsides of this past year is we started our first ever virtual 5K fun run, which actually for us to being in a location where we have an international alumni base, and even within the country, right, everyone has different rules and things look different to people. That's one thing we've been having, trying to navigate is like, what does it look like when the rules are different in different places? So I think that will be a tradition that we continue, that we're excited about, is being able to, we don't have plans for an in-person version of component of that this year, but it really is, we're pushing out, like, get your small group of alums together wherever you are, and we're really pushing it as both a regional and local engagement opportunity. So that will continue, and our plan is to do reunions for the most part all in person this year, unless unless we hear otherwise. So
are you doing anything virtual?
We'll do some. So one of the things that I think we're really pivoting on, that when we talk, it also impacts budget, is, prior to COVID, we did a lot of small events where we'd have, say, 25, 30 people. And we looked from a budget standpoint. I mean, we're spending, our per person expenditure for those was so high. And it was really, regionally based, if you look at traffic and all of that stuff. So I think what our plan is to continue to do, if we've got our real estate network event or an entrepreneurs event, there's a bunch of those that we used to hold in person that will shift those to virtual. And maybe have just highlighted ones that are in person throughout the year, as opposed to, it used to be everything was in person and nothing was virtual. And I think now we'll take a look to say, both from a budget standpoint and from a experience standpoint, that we can engage a broader group of people on some of those events.
For sure. Carol or Kim, is there anything else you want to throw in there around virtual events that you haven't kind of hit on?
Yeah, virtual is here to stay. And I think, hybrid is the next iteration of it. We are, in addition to all these in-person events, we do have a virtual networking program that we're planning for early September as well. I mean, that's something that we can't let go, because we engage so many alums from all over the world. Just anecdotally, we did this really early on in the pandemic in April of 2020, and one of our international students who lives in Italy was able to find an internship with an international alum who lives in Amsterdam. So we can't let that go. It's just too valuable for the alumni base and for the student base and for the donor base. So that will continue. What I haven't quite figured out yet is adding the hybrid piece to our programming. I've been using Zoom since 2018 for my alumni board meetings, and they've always been hybrid. So now it's just a matter of extrapolating and trying to figure out how to do that with, events that aren't meetings.
Yeah, I would throw in too that something we did during the pandemic that I'd like to continue was a series that we did monthly, once or twice a month, depending on how the month played out. But it was Ask Me Anything. So I would hand pick alumni that either, we wanted to engage and bring a little bit closer, Usually that was the reason. And that they had an area of expertise that wasn't so narrow as to be career oriented, but be more broader in sort of like life lessons topics. So for instance, the guy who's the bank president didn't talk about being a bank president. He talked about being a first generation African-American student from South Central and overcoming hurdles and obstacles consistently through his life, and sort of like how that has shaped who he is. And those were the lessons. It's like the lessons that people want to impart. And I think those have been really valuable because, like I said, they're broad in scope. It doesn't matter what the person does for a living. It's like what they share is universally of import. So I'd like to continue those. And, they're recorded. And I think that building that digital library of recordings is in itself really valuable, especially when you're like us and we have these regional sort of small outpost campuses where those people just aren't going to come to main campus for an event. They just don't. And I understand it. But so being able to create something of value that we can put on the shelf on our online networking platform and say, here you go, check it out at your leisure, I feel like is really valuable for people.
100%, I completely agree. Here's an interesting question that came out of the Q&A. For those of you that have chapters, how are you prepping them to host events in different states while still abiding by COVID protocols? Like, are you hosting trainings? Are you creating resources and tools for them? Or do you have chapter heads that are just doing the research on their own? How are you handling that? I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but whoever wants to jump in can.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in here a little bit. That is one of the things we developed over this past year that was great that we had some time to do, which is we absolutely have a volunteer training we actually launched in this past year. Again, it's just a way to get people engaged, like a volunteer orientation that we held a bunch of sessions to get people start coding and capture the data on people who would be interested in volunteering, and whether it's virtual or in person when that time comes. And then we are creating a mechanism where alums can now submit an event for other alums to join, but they have to have first attended a training and agreed to basically follow the university guidelines and local health guidelines that are in place at that time. So they basically just have to sign a waiver saying, yes, I will respect those, and then they can submit their events.
Definitely. Kim, Carol, anything you want to throw in?
To be honest, I haven't really done anything far, away across the country or anything. I'd like to, and I'm definitely going to be tapping you, Teresa, to see what that I think that structure is like, here's how you do it. This is what you do. This is what you abide by. Go, is a good idea. Because the ROI on those events for us, it's just so dicey. Somebody will say, oh, like a major gift officer will say, oh, we have important alums in Boston. You really need to do something in Boston. Well, the cost of going out to Boston, and I love Boston, don't get me wrong, but the cost of flying out to Boston to ultimately have like 6 people show up at a bar one night is really questionable, especially now. So if I could get people to kind of convene on their own, like feel empowered to do so, and then, if they were getting to a point where 20 people or so were showing up to things, then, then it warrants a plane trip. But yeah, that's the really hard part for us, is we don't have big enough clusters of alums in those markets far away.
But Boston is super fun though, for what it's worth.
Boston is super fun. We don't have huge base of alums in various regions either. Not enough to, for example, do an event in Southern California every 3 months or so. We do in DC and we do in Boston. And then in the New York regional area, really we have more professional affinity networks that are developing programs. But right now I'm just having one-off conversations with them about what their plans are and, and how they're going to go about them.
For sure. Here's another interesting question from the audience. This is from Carol and Howard. For those of you with affinity partnerships and alumni discounts, what seems to be the most requested promotions as restrictions are ending? Is it travel promo codes as we might expect, or are we seeing any unique and surprising trends? So once again, I'm not going to throw anybody on the spot here, but are you seeing anything around, your partnerships? and what people are asking for?
The only thing that sometimes people ask for, which we have, are insurance discounts. So, because everybody needs car insurance. So, the Geico discount. Well, I tried to launch a travel program pre-pandemic and just couldn't really get it off the ground. I had started them before on the East Coast and had a little bit more success. I would love to do it, don't get me wrong, but our population just doesn't seem to be there yet. So really it's been pretty much like, oh, I can get $50 off on Geico. Great. And that, what about you at USC? I would think you guys have amazing, like a menu of benefits.
But I'm sure our business partnerships people would be very happy to hear you say that. But yeah, so I mean, I would say we have the standard ones. I would think in terms of what I've noticed of trends, we have a partnership with hotel discounts. So we have a full travel program that does curated trips. That's pretty high end for the most part, but we also have an offering that's kind of for all alums that we find really our young alumni base is usually when we look at the metrics on it, that's who's usually engaging with it. It's like a basic like hotels and entertainment discount, and that's starting to pick back up. That's really the only kind of shift that we've seen, but we really haven't initiated any new programs in the last kind of year and a half.
For sure. Carol, here's a question for you. What is the relationship between alumni relations and student recruiting or enrollment look like at your institution? And how are you approaching that for the coming fall?
So I've been at Drew since 2016, and one of the first initiatives put into place was to have alumni relations and the admissions or enrollment management office team up to identify volunteers, to host college fairs, to conduct interviews with students, to show up at our prospective student days. I would schedule our alumni board meetings around prospective student visits, so that student days, so that they would go to breakfast and meet with families, mingle with families, and then go off to do their meeting. And that was really well received by the administration. During the pandemic, all of that fell off. So the admissions team did all their own interviews. One of the things that they were talking about was having alumni write notes to admitted students. We didn't get that off the ground this summer, but I expect that will happen starting in with the fall admission cycle and then next spring as well. College fairs, I would imagine, have changed considerably, although I've not spoken with my colleagues in enrollment management. Who knows what college fairs are going to look like after this? Everything has changed during the pandemic. Our Discover Drew days, our prospective student days, are going back to normal. And in fact, the next visit day is during that big fall festival. So we will have some of our alumni board members and other alums come a little bit earlier to attend the lunch with our prospective students.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So kind of my next question, and Kim, we'll start with you. This past year and a half, many colleges and universities have been dealing with some pretty substantial financial repercussions as a result of COVID. According to some analysis, U.S. colleges and universities stand to lose a collective $183 billion as a result of the pandemic. And that has led to institutions doubling down on advancement activities. So how are you working with advancement or development in the months to come? Kim, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, I should be clear that my role falls underneath the advancement umbrella. So our VP of advancement oversees alumni engagement, fundraising, community. She's starting to get into like community political affairs and planned giving, et cetera. So we're all considered to be one team. We did, by both design and default, have a pretty drastic reduction in staffing. We're small anyway, we're very lean. We started off as a whole department in advancement of about 33 people. Now we're down to 13. So some of those fundraisers were furloughed and then they left. And then when someone left, we're not allowed to rehire because there's a hiring freeze. So we're kind of stuck in this space of being really small and just kind of really pulling together. So we're kind of almost working in ad hoc teams right now. So, you know, I oversee social media, let's just say, for the alumni, which is a lot of constant messaging. And I've pulled in, you know, 3 other people who like social media, want to work, you know, in social media to help with that. So we have weekly meetings, we establish what we're going to post, we divide and conquer who's going to come up with what content, whatever, and then, you know, we get it out there. So we've just been really, so doubling down in advancement. I would say we haven't been able to add any resources to advancement. I've focused my energy in terms of alumni outreach in a way that helps build relationships for the fundraisers because they're so lean, if that makes sense.
It does. That does make sense. Teresa, how about from your side? You know, how are you involved, if at all, in advancement activities or with development?
Yeah, so we're a division of advancement, but I don't know that we necessarily are involved. I think I look at us as we're the stewardship, right, arm of advancement for the most part. We certainly work really closely with annual giving, and we have components of giving tied into what we do. I think, you know, one of the big shifts will be when we look at moving forward, and we've been really lucky, honestly, we've been on a hiring freeze, but we haven't lost staff in our department. I think the big shifts as we look forward to of, you know, those things are like, what are the trips that people don't need to take that they used to take? How are we leveraging? I mean, I think we're having lots of conversations around, you know, making how we shift budgetary resources based on kind of what we used to think you needed to do and what we think we can do now. And I think we'll end up somewhere in the middle when it's all said and done.
Definitely. Carol, anything you want to throw in there on the relationship between advancement and development, you know, for Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I am also under the advancement arm with the dotted line to launch, and we've always worked very closely on various things. Sometimes doing those events that the gift officer thinks need to happen that end up not having the best ROI. What we have been doing during the pandemic is we meet every single day as a team virtually. And I probably have conversations with major gift officers at least every other week with some of them. We are also very lean. We're down to 15. However, our 4 major gift officers are all part-time. So, you know, it's a matter of kind of navigating their schedule while also trying to help them think creatively about engagement opportunities for their prospective donors.
That kind of segues into my next question, which is, you know, beyond advancement, how are you working with other on-campus partners? Carol, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of campus partners. The activity with academic departments has actually increased since the pandemic, I would say. I don't know if it's because we had more virtual meetings or I show up at the faculty meetings now, but they're reaching out to me a lot more to identify alumni who can mentor their students. The Launch Center, of course, is also, you know, kind of code for our Center for Immersive Learning and Career Design. Career Center falls underneath it. So we have been working very closely to engage alumni virtually in first-year classes to provide feedback. Actually, in April of 2020, we somehow identified 106 unique alums to participate in it. Probably 70% of who were new to the volunteer base from all around the world. You know, I think the farthest was maybe from India. And the work with campus with enrollment management is picking up again very actively. And then I also work with campus life and student activities on parent programming. So it died down for a little bit, and I think, you know, everything's just kind of coming back as the students come back fully on campus in the fall.
For sure. Well, that's great that you're working with those campus partners so closely. Kim, how about for you?
I would say that that's been sort of a silver lining of the pandemic, is that because things are so lean across the board, everyone's sort of forced to be creative for how, you know, they as their 1-person or 2-person team can keep pumping out, you know, programming. So the programming piece has been key for us because I wanted it to look like, we have all these offerings for alums, but yet I don't have the bandwidth to be creating a bunch of my own programming. So working with, we have something called the Lewis Center for Wellness and Health and Wellness. I can't even get the title right, but it's a new center that we opened maybe right before the pandemic, and it's been a godsend because they were doing all of this like yoga and mindfulness classes and all these things. And ordinarily they're only thinking about students, right? That this is what we do for students and maybe faculty and staff. Well, there's no reason that we couldn't open that up to alumni too, especially since it's virtual. So being able to kind of like take their content and plop it in our menu of here's what you can do at home, courtesy of University of Laverne has been really helpful. The other piece that was really helpful is our Office of Community Engagement. She's really keen on grabbing alumni in the field of nonprofits, local politics, et cetera, and kind of pulling them together. So we did a few series together that we co-sponsored on like how to get involved in your local community, women in politics, those sorts of things. Those were great. And then really the big win for like cross-campus collaboration was we hit a huge, speed bump with commencement. So our spring commencement last spring, 2020, was all virtual. We have a winter commencement, which was virtual. And then we were heading into this spring commencement, and in LA County, where we were on, riding that wave of to do or not do in person, it was awful. And so we decided to continue doing, as planned, the virtual celebration, but we wanted, since we were then allowed to have people come on campus. We all across campus, I got a bunch of volunteers. I used Sign Up Genius to get faculty and staff to volunteer. And we did 2 days of a grad box pickup parade. So we had, special boxes full of stuff, their license plate frame, their diploma cover, stickers and decals and just fun stuff, and a nice letterpress letter from the president, all boxed up. And they came through in their cars. They had their cars all decorated. We had our Leo FM radio people out there and announcing each car as they came by. So, now we've got Dan Sullivan, blah, blah, blah. And it really was fun. And it was the first time that we were all able to be on campus. So we were masked, but it didn't matter. We just really had a good time for 2 Saturdays to do that. And I think that went a long, long way toward making those graduates feel special and feel like, oh, wow, I'm an alum and this is what my alumni office did for me. This is pretty cool. So that's something I think that was really sticky, and that right away everybody was saying, we have to keep doing this. We have to keep doing this. So, so that was really felt special.
That's awesome. No, that's phenomenal. I actually have another question about that in a second, but first I want to hear from Teresa. Teresa, any thoughts on working with on-campus partners? How are you handling that?
Yeah, sure. I would say like the 2 ways we've maybe where we've added some focus or pivoted in the last year is, we've always worked with career services, which is a division of student affairs at USC. And we really took the opportunity this year to focus on, they have a mentoring and networking platform. So I think with this volunteer void for a lot of our alums, we really did a huge kind of periodic push to get more alums on that platform, especially with all of the focus around our, the class of 2020 or 2021 grads and them needing some resources. So we really pushed to get alumni mentors on that program, and also pushed our young alums to say, hey, if you want to connect with someone, ask a question or do something, like here's a great way to find a space online to do it. So we hope that will continue, and then there'll be an in-person component as well to it. The other thing I think that shifted in the last year that we hope to move forward is, we've never had, everyone's always asked for a central, we're a very decentralized model at USC. So we're the Central Alumni Association, but then most of our schools have individual alumni offices as well. So we partnered a lot with them this year. We do an events digest, and we had our partners would submit their events to us. And as long as they submitted them, we would put them on our central calendar and also promote them. So I think that was a great shift that happened, that everyone was always terrified to think about pre-COVID. And we'll try to look at what that looks like at scale, but we're really excited about, there's a new place that we have some synergy moving forward. that I think is a real upside to alums. So yeah.
100%. And that actually segues nicely into a question that we got from Mary. Are your offices doing anything, or have you done anything specifically for the class of 2020 since they were unable to have a traditional graduation ceremony or celebratory recognition during the pandemic? So again, not going to put any of you on the spot, but whoever wants to jump in, anything special you did for the class of 2020? Kim, you shared a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, in addition to that parade, we wound up doing an in-person event in San Bernardino County. So, they had different restrictions than we did in LA. So we kind of just hopped over there and we're able to do something in the baseball stadium so that students could bring their families, could walk across the stage. It was abbreviated, they didn't get their hoods put on and there was no contact, no handshaking, all that. But they had that opportunity. There was a stage, there was the president, they got to walk across, have their name called and have their families there. And I think that meant a lot to them.
Definitely. Carol, Teresa, anything you want to throw in there?
We did offer an in-person commencement for our class of 2020 also. So I think they came back on a Thursday night, and then we had, 6 other commencement ceremonies during the course of the weekend for everyone else. No one really got the commencement that they wanted because we typically do it behind this beautiful building that's called Mead Hall on the lawn back there, and everyone's crowded in and everyone got moved to the stadium. So I think that's probably something we're going to have to revisit next spring. Maybe we'll do something special for them at reunion, and as many 2020s and 2021s as we can get back, we'll do something additional on top of that. But the folks who came back for 2020 commencement really loved it and had a great time, and I think appreciated it. The students who it didn't really benefit were our international students because they couldn't come back.
For sure, that makes sense. So anybody else have any other thoughts there? No, I've got, go over to Teresa.
Yeah, I would just say really quickly, we do a graduation celebration every year. And so we just did a virtual version of it. And then this year we did a virtual version again, even though, Central University had in-person commencement, we still did our virtual celebration, and we did enhanced programming for it throughout the week with alumni panelists and a DJ component and just some things like that we invited both classes to. We actually had a decent turnout for it. So that's about it.
That's fun. Here's another good question from the audience. This is from Reginald Jones. Is anyone segmenting their alumni events audiences by young alumni, i.e. less than 5 years post-grad versus experienced alumni 5+ years post-grad? And if you are, how are you engaging the young alumni versus the experienced alumni, and how is that differing at all? Again, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, so whoever wants to jump in can.
Sure. I'm happy to jump in on this. So we have kind of 4 segmentations, and we really focus the bulk of our segmentation is with our HC tiers, which are Kimberly, like your group as well, which is the half-century Trojans. So we had a lot of specialized programming for them where we taught them how to do Zoom and we had a bunch of instructions this last year. And then our young alumni segmentation is actually up to 15 years out, but we have within that, we have a recent grad sub segment that is 3 years out. So first 3 years out, and then it's 15. And we'll do, again, I think, we've started in the last year, we got lucky with the timing, again, of doing a lot more segmentation in our email marketing. So things that are, career-based or getting started or first-time home buyers, whatever it may be, we're doing more targeting around either birth date and or grad year. So we look at it where we can, as one of the segmentations for sure.
It's interesting, the idea of kind of focusing that content, obviously, first-time home buyers, et cetera, towards that grad year. Kim, did you have a thought?
Yeah, we tried segmenting our e-news for new graduates and then kind of everybody else. An interesting kind of conundrum that I have is that our sort of traditional undergrad population is actually very small. We have a lot of adult learners. So, people working full-time jobs, going to school, online, on the weekends, at night, whatever. So this concept of like young alums, I really struggle with. So we're starting to call it recent alums, and I'm taking a harder look at who they actually are. Because for instance, there's only 1,000 people living on campus. So of the 8,000 students, so only an eighth fall into that classic category of traditional undergrad between the ages of more or less 18 and 22. So it's always a struggle to kind of, with our language and with our programming, to realize that we don't fit into a traditional box. Of course, those 1,000 students, they tend to be more engaged. You could argue that, that they're more likely to be donors down the road. So we do have to prioritize them, but we have to be realistic that if we go whole hog on the rah, weren't the football games fun, we lose a lot of people who say, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. That wasn't my experience. So I'm really trying to find out more about who they are and then target that way. We also are an HSI, which is a Hispanic serving institution. And largely that is by default. Like, you have a certain percentage of Latinx students and they call you, you get the designation, but what does that really mean? What really motivates them? And I've learned that, we're 60% female and about almost 70% Latinx. So thinking about it in terms of like Latinx women, what are they really interested in? How should I be talking to them? I think that's my future of segmentation rather than how many years you're out of school, if that makes
That definitely makes sense. I think that's a really smart way to think about it.
Yeah.
Carol, do you have anything you want to throw in there? All right, so I'll move to the next question. Another consequence that we have seen, through the pandemic has been cuts to staff and budget. Many alumni relations teams are leaner or smaller than they've ever been before. So how are you making the most of your resources as a small team? And maybe also specifically, what changes have you made or have you continued to make that ensure you're continuing to be efficient? So Carol, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Actually, my staff was cut in September of 2019 from.
You were ready for this.
I was ready for it. We were cut from 3 team members to four as a team to 2, including me. We rely on our student workers a lot more. So I went from having 2 student workers working 20 hours a week to having 3 student workers working 20 hours a week. I leaned a lot more heavily on the alumni board. That shifted a little bit during the pandemic. But I was actually able to lean a little bit more on the Casperson School Alumni Council as well. Our collaboration with campus partners has increased. So my team actually manages our networking platform, our networking and mentoring platform. Folks in the Career Center now support that management. So that was something that I really had to negotiate for, but was a necessity because it obviously benefits students as well. But the big thing really is the student workers. We had just decided to do a digital version of class notes when my team was cut in September of 2019. We had done away with the hard copy magazine. We just decided to restart the digital issue. And until I had that student worker piece figured out, we had to stop it again. It's now fully back up, but only because I have a student worker who's a great proofreader and very careful in checking the database for attributions and spellings, and it's the only way we could have done it.
Absolutely. Teresa, how about for you? How are you all, working on your efficiencies?
Yeah, I would say the biggest change for us that I, being a data nerd, am most excited about is we've really had an opportunity to get, I think, everyone on board with the shift of the importance of of the single source of truth, right, for data, and capturing it, and how that makes such a difference and how we're able to then find and leverage information. So I think we had a twofold situation. One, we launched our new alumni platform in the past year, where we're allowing alums to do a lot more directly. So instead of asking us to modify their communication preferences or asking us to update this, we're really doing huge pushes to get them to log in and do it themselves. It also, I think, ends up being in more places, which is good for everyone. So we're even looking like at our event emails, you know, doing reminders of here's how you log in, here's where you can access this information. And then on the flip side of that is making sure coding event attendees is a manual process for us, but I think everyone kind of bought in a lot more this year and are seeing kind of the fruits of their labor with capturing data and then being able to leverage that. So I think, in my mind anyways, our biggest shift in this past year has been kind of this reliance and understanding of the reliance and importance of data and shared data. So that's I think what will make our lives easier moving forward. So we'll see.
For sure. A couple folks in the chat are asking what platform you're using that is allowing your alumni to update themselves.
Yeah, so we actually are on Salesforce and we use Salesforce Communities. Our CRM is Salesforce, and then we built out a custom engagement platform on the community. I think they just changed it to Experience Cloud instead of Community Cloud, but it's a Salesforce product.
One more question, one more
Sure.
follow-up. How clean is the data that you're getting when the alumni are self-updating?
You know, it's interesting. We had those conversations about what we should allow people to do. For the most part, it's pretty clean. I mean, I think you have to look at, I think it's a big worry for people of like, oh, someone's going to go in and put Mickey Mouse. Again, to some extent, you know, there is what they have on the data side, there's an interim process where they can kind of see if anything looks, you know, super weird. It shows the source. So we can see in our CRM if it came from community. So we know that the alum did it themselves.
Okay.
You know, we have a disclaimer that says, you can't use this inappropriately or you'll lose your privileges. I think for the most part, it's not a problem. It's certainly better than a lot of the random data that's in our database already, right? I mean, I think that's one of our bigger challenges is, you know, if it's coming from them, we know they want it. You know, if this is your nickname and that's what you want to be called by, you're telling us directly. So I think so far we haven't seen an issue with it. And they run it through, I know they've got like an address data check or things like that. They're looking for errors or misspellings. They have an automated system that if you spell California wrong, it's correcting it or things like that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Kim, going back to, you've talked a lot about being lean and mean, or not super mean, but very lean. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're making the most of those resources, staff resources or lack thereof?
Yes. So to piggyback on a couple of things that people have said, we actually, I kind of lost team members right before the pandemic also, like Carol said. I started off with 3 of us, then we were down to 2. And literally the last day we were in the office was the last day that my team member was working before she hopped over on the other side of the fence over into our Office of Strategic Communications. So I started the pandemic as a solo office and was a little panicked, to say the least. But the advancement team really stepped up, you know, and like I said, we have the committee for managing social media. I have a committee that manages communications. We do not produce our own magazine. That happens in the Office of Strategic Communications. And that had been on hold because they had staffing issues too, but we just put out our first real live copy for the first time in about 1.5 years, which is very exciting. But the data question, you know, is a big one because people all over campus have their shadow databases that they love to hold on to. The coaches are like the most egregious, you know, in that regard, you know, oh no, I've got my information. So trying to get them to share information. We have a platform too, an online networking platform called Leo Connect, which is hosted by Graduate. And we've had that for a few years now. And I've focused a lot of energy in trying to push people into that, you know, to DIY it, you know, so set up your profile, offer to help, you know, then you're tagged as a would-be mentor. So like recent alumni, go in there, find a mentor. It's really easy to see the list of 20 people who the algorithm matches you up with. Affinity groups, go in there, use the group functionality to organize yourself and to have a place to chat, you know, that's more democratic, say, than Facebook feels or any other social platform. So I would say that my trying to push people into that platform to continually remind them of why it's valuable, what they can actually do for themselves, and how they can actually connect with each other, because there's a directory in there. So you can look for people based on a number of attributes. So, but we do struggle with the data thing, because of course, people are going in there, they're updating their information, and it resides there. It doesn't reside in Banner, which is what we're still using. So our advancement services team, they're not crazy about that, because then that means they have to go in and pull down the updates and upload them into Banner. So it's a little sticky from that vantage point. It's not perfect, but I do believe that like DIY is the future for alumni, like giving them those tools and empowering them to use it, giving them the videos, the how-to videos of how you do this, because, we just don't have the bandwidth for them to be calling us saying, hi, I'm looking for someone who's in media in New York City. Well, okay, here's how you find that, using the platform. So yeah, ad hocing, community, cross-campus partnerships, and DIY it with the platform, I feel like is how we've survived.
For sure. One person was asking what the platform is called.
Sorry, I was muted. It's called, the URL is leoalumninetwork.com, and it's run by Graduate.
Awesome. So we've got about 4 minutes left. So quick question here. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of aspects of alumni relations, and launching alumni engagement fully into the digital era, whether we wanted to or not. It's really changed the way that we've worked, both kind of internally and externally, and it's also changed the way that we use resources. So what are the biggest lessons that you have seen coming out of the pandemic that you've implemented that you're taking with you into the fall and the subsequent years? So Carol, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think that a few things, right? Digital engagement opportunities are going to be the key in learning new tech tools and finding new tech tools to help people engage. I totally agree with the DIYing it. We're trying to do that with our platform through Connect as well, which is a people growth product. And, and then it's just figuring out how to get the data out of there and up into Razor's Edge. So that's the piece we're trying to figure out. I think that the biggest lesson I have learned is to enjoy change, because there's benefit to it, right? The landscape of alumni relations is going to continue to change. It's going to shift, it's going to evolve. We don't even know what it's going to look like a year from now. I think that's like the biggest lesson that I've learned over the past year and a half. And talk to your fellow alumni relations professionals and see what they're doing. There are a lot of schools who are farther ahead and thinking about these things, and colleagues who maybe need some advice, and you can just grow your ideas out of there.
Awesome. And Kim, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mentioned that, I think focusing on the new grads is going to stick with us, because, if you can keep them in that happy space from graduation into becoming an alum, that goes a long way over the long haul. The recordings, being able to engage alumni from afar with these Ask Me Anythings or similar kind of virtual programs that then you can record, that then you can store and build up that library is really important. But the actual big takeaway that I have is kind of funny, because it has nothing to do with alumni relations. So during the pandemic, I was involved in a group on campus that was getting trained in Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, right? The concept of continual process improvement. And two takeaways there have helped me enormously, and I think will continue to. One is the concept of don't go it alone. So even when you are alone, literally you're a one person team, don't go it alone. So find people who are willing to help you, who are eager to share their ideas, who you can bounce things off of, tap them for help. So don't go it alone. And then this was a big one, because it's all about communications. If you noticed during the pandemic, there were people who were just, endlessly negative. Everything was just sort of like, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but I can't. So it's yes, and. So whatever anyone says to you, the answer is yes, and ... So even if you're saying, but like, this is the reason I can't do that, or it's impossible, you don't phrase it that way. You say, yes, great idea. And maybe if we can get, the other department of whatever to help us, we can make that happen. So it's like that shift of, instead of always throwing up the hurdles of why this won't work, why this is impossible, oh my gosh, I have no staff, oh my gosh, you cut my budget, just sort of like, yes, great idea. And, maybe if we, so that has been a really, I think, powerful shift in communicating ideas with people and getting them to come on board with you rather than creating, barriers.
I love that positivity. Teresa, take us home.
So really quickly, I would just say, I think the two things, and you guys have both talked about that, is one is this, we're excited about, there's the new possibilities, right? This idea that we could never have done an event virtual and it wouldn't be acceptable. I think there's a bunch of things that are now acceptable and even seen as going to be as new best practices that we never would have considered doing before, because people were used to what they were used to. And now we have an opportunity to reinvent some things that we wanted to change that I think would have been very difficult to change if we hadn't all had to really go through the changes that we've been through. And then I would again just reiterate that I think if we can keep up our best practices on data and coding, we will be light years ahead of where we were before. So those are kind of our two focuses moving forward.
Awesome. We are over time, so I'm going to ask in 10 words or less, what is one takeaway you'd want each person watching to be able to take home to their organization? Teresa, you want to start us off? 10 words or less.
Single source of truth. That would be my thing for data. Try to find a single source of truth as much as you can.
Love it. Carol.
Oh boy, give me a moment. Kim, you go first.
All right, Kim, you go.
All right, I'm going to cheat because I'm going to say what I just said. Don't go it alone, and yes, and instead of no, but.
Love that. Carol.
I didn't want to cheat, but really, enjoy change. It's here to stay. Enjoy what we've been able to learn, and it's not 10 words or less, but evaluate ROI on prior events. Don't go back to the same old, same old.
Love that. Awesome. Well, Kim, Carol, Teresa, thank you so much for being here. We're recording this webinar. It'll be posted on the Cuseum website later today. So if you have any ideas of topics you want us to cover, I would love to know what they are. You can email me, dan@cuseum.com or hello@cuseum.com for our future alumni hours. We'll have another one coming up, date to be announced, so stay tuned on that. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. And panelists, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.